The Cleveland Curse. 52 years. That's how long Cleveland went without winning a major sports title, dating back to the Browns winning the 1964 NFL Championship, finally broken in dramatic fashion by the 2015-2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. Something strange about that statement, though, is that it used to be slightly different. Instead of, Cleveland hasn't won a major sports title since 1964, it used to be, Cleveland hasn't won a sports title since 1964. The word major exists because of a couple caveats that happened in that 52-year stretch. 8 days before the Cavs won their title, the Lake Erie Monsters, Cleveland's American Hockey League team which shares the same arena as the Cavs, won the Calder Cup championship. Ironically, it was Cleveland's first Calder Cup win since the Barons did it in, wait for it, 1964. But this video is not about the Barons or the Monsters. This is about another team that managed to win a title before the Browns, Indians, or Cavaliers. The Cleveland Crunch. Let's take an abbreviated tour through the history of the team that won a championship faster than any of Cleveland's major sports teams.
Schweitzer has a break. Off the glass, rebound. Oh! Hector! Durant, look out, trouble! Missed by Tenners, he got another one. He got Rodgers, hit Tima, and cleared out by Schweitzer. Let's see if that gives the Crunch any momentum. It's the 2-on-1. The shot, the score! Beautiful play! And another goal from the Cleveland Crunch. What goes around comes around. And a rocket! Got 2 3-pointers in the series. Carrot to the score!
Sports in the US in the 80s and 90s were in a weird place. Case in point, there were some indoor soccer teams that had better attendance than most NBA teams. Indoor soccer, or arena soccer, is what happens when someone combines the general idea of soccer with the arena, pace, and roster management of hockey, and in some cases, a couple scoring principles from basketball. For example, there are blue card penalties, which force a player to sit for 2 minutes in a penalty box, which initiates a power play. Players substitute in and out on the fly. Certain rule sets of indoor soccer incorporate scoring bonuses, such as 2 points for shots outside the goalie area, and even a straight-up 3-point line. Oh, and getting checked into the boards is a penalty, but it still happens.
Deep pass for McIntosh, who's taken down hard.
Whereas outdoor soccer is often poked fun at for being low scoring, indoor soccer games, depending on their rules, can easily look more like baseball scores, or in some cases, end with both teams in double digits. One league like this, the Major Indoor Soccer League, got the ball rolling in the late 70s, eventually managing to have 14 teams in the league during its peak. It had one of its charter franchises in Cleveland, called the Cleveland Force. To give you an idea of the type of people running this team, the name Force is exactly what you think it is. A Star Wars reference. In fact, they would use Star Wars music for matches and had Darth Vader as their mascot. They even did this after the team rebranded back to the Force in the 2000s. Here's a picture of team mascot Darth Vader introducing the team. You know what, everyone I've seen talk about the Force uses that photo, so I'm gonna do you one better. Here's video of the Darth Vader mascot trying to psych up the crowd as the team gets introduced. Here's a giant inflatable Darth Vader holding a soccer ball. The team would run out from between his legs during the pregame intro. I actually saw this live once, and I'm pretty sure I didn't stop laughing until 10 minutes after kickoff. The Force were bold enough to do this without getting permission from George Lucas at first. Eventually they got permission, which makes me wonder where the Cleveland Force arc fits in the Star Wars canon. While the team struggled at first, eventually they became a force to be reckoned with, and I'll just show myself out. The team was relatively popular, averaging over 10,000 fans per game into the late 80s as they regularly challenged for a title, but kept coming up short. Then in the 1987-88 season, they made it to the finals, and got swept in 4 games by the San Diego Sockers, which is only a slightly better name than the Cleveland Force. Here's a question for you. How do you think the team responded to getting swept in the finals? Did they A. make it back to the finals the next season, B. make the playoffs but get eliminated before the finals, C. narrowly miss the playoffs because of a division tiebreaker not going their way, or D. shut down entirely because team ownership wanted out and couldn't agree to terms on selling the team? In true Cleveland-flavored Murphy's Law fashion, the answer is D. The very next year, Cleveland would get an expansion team back in the league, guided by a new ownership group that included the guy the prior ownership group couldn't come to terms with, George Hoffman, a businessman who worked just a short trip down I-77 in Akron. The team changed names to the Cleveland Crunch, saving money by employing a dinosaur named Kickster as the mascot instead of lining George Lucas's pockets. Hoffman and company brought aboard Al Miller, who was the general manager of the Force, in the same position. They would employ a player-slash-coach in Kai Haskevy, who was a prominent player with the Force through the 80s and led the league in assists a couple years prior. In fact, much of the roster consisted of players who were on the Force during its glory years. This strategy usually backfires horribly for pro sports teams, but for the Crunch, they finished 4th in their division with a sub-500 record and missed the playoffs. Despite that, something happened that changed the direction of the team for years to come. Near the end of the season, the team traded for Zoran Karic. Karic was the league's Rookie of the Year a couple seasons prior, and won 2 championships with the San Diego Sockers, scoring the second most goals for the team in the 88 season. By the end of his career, he would be a 10-time All-Star, lead the league in assists 6 times, points twice, and goals once. He would also become the All-Star Game MVP 3 times and League MVP once. Along with some other moves, including a coaching change, the team would go from last in their division to first. That massive jump in the standings wasn't just because of Karic. He wound up becoming the perfect complement to another player, someone who I can't talk about the Crunch or indoor soccer in general at all without mentioning: Hector Marinaro. Hector, who would also make a few appearances for the Canadian national team, spent his rookie year with the Force in the 83-84 season and barely played at all. From there he bounced between the Major Indoor Soccer League and the Canadian Soccer League. Eventually he wound up going back to Cleveland, because apparently he had some good memories with the team from that rookie season. That wound up being the best move of his career. When he retired, Marinaro would be a 14-time All-Star, lead the league in points 8 times, and win the league MVP award 6 times. He was so loved by Cleveland that he wound up getting a candy bar named after him. Appropriately, it was a Crunch bar. Oh, and did I mention he would also go on to score more goals and points than anyone in indoor soccer history? Not league history, I mean all of professional indoor soccer. And just as a happy little accident, he wound up scoring his 1,000th goal against his brother, Rob Marinaro. The team would make it back to the finals that season and face a familiar foe, the San Diego Sockers. And they lost again. At least they won a couple games in the series this time. The next season would be a bit of a hangover year, as the goal output between Karic and Marinaro dropped to 92, with Karic in particular only scoring a little over half the amount of goals he did in the prior season. Though another reason for this drop in goals was that they played 5 fewer games. They played 5 fewer games because they didn't make it to the finals that year. Or any year after. Because the Major Indoor Soccer League, now known as the Major Soccer League, shut down in 1992. However, the Crunch remained relatively popular up to that point, still pulling close to 7,000 people to each game. The Crunch and 3 other MISL teams would quickly find a new home for the next season in the NPSL, the National Professional Soccer League, which recently adopted the MISL scoring rules, which allowed goals to count for 1, 2, or 3 points depending on where the shot took place and whether or not a power play was happening. The Crunch would find immediate success, posting a 25-15 record and making it to their first NPSL finals and third finals overall in 1993. Karic had his best year yet, setting new personal bests for goals and assists. Marinero, however, was playing out of his mind. Unlike Karic, who was equally effective at scoring and distributing the ball, Marinero was slightly more geared towards scoring than setting others up. He still set a new career high with 50 assists, but that season, he managed to score a staggering 100 goals in just 38 games. Also, the San Diego Sockers were not in the NPSL, so they couldn't hog the glory this time. Unfortunately, in their place were the Kansas City Attack, who won their first championship in the 5th game of a best-of-5 series. Then, as ridiculous as it may sound, considering how close the Crunch came, only to fall short again, and that this was the year Marinero led the league in scoring and won league MVP, and Karic won All-Star Game MVP with the game being played in Cleveland, they came back the next season and were even better. The 93-94 season saw Zoran Karic break his career highs in goals and assists, scoring 85 goals and assisting 104 others in 36 games, giving him a staggering 189 points, marking the second time he led the league in scoring and the one time anyone in that league ever hit triple digits for assists. Hector Marinero, however, he was well into video game territory. He only amassed a paltry, insignificant 43 assists that season, but made up for it by netting 113 goals in 37 appearances. He was basically a living cheat code at this point, and paired with Karic, it wasn't a matter of if they'd end up scoring, just whether or not the two of them alone would outscore the entire opposing team by themselves, leading the team back to the finals for the 4th time, where they would face the St. Louis Ambush, a team that was only around for 3 or 4 years at this point and making their first ever finals appearance. That said, the Ambush were not intimidated at all. The Crunch started this series with a blowout 26-6 loss to the Ambush, with David Doyle of St. Louis breaking the league record for most points in a single game with 13. The Crunch rebounded with a 21-14 win in Game 2, and in Game 3, Marinero saw what Doyle did and said, "Hold my mullet," and put up 17 points in a dominant 29-8 win in Cleveland. That would set the stage for April 26, 1994, the CSU Convocation Center, aka the Convo, aka the Wolstein Center in downtown Cleveland. The NPSL Finals Game 4, the Cleveland Crunch versus the St. Louis Ambush, with the Crunch on the brink of winning that elusive championship in front of a home crowd, the first of any kind the city would have seen since 1964. Karic came into this game with a bad left ankle, which he injured in Game 3. He usually took Cleveland's free kicks whenever possible, but for this game, he split that responsibility with the healthier Marinero. Well, healthier if you ignore that black eye he got from a couple games ago. St. Louis had a couple injuries themselves, not the least of which being a broken toe for their goalkeeper Bill Cowie. Both Karic and Cowie would play, and though neither were healthy, either of them at 70% were still better options than most other players at 100%. For the whole series, whoever scored first ultimately went on to win the game, and in Game 4, St. Louis scored first with a 2-point goal. Not a good start. Later on, St. Louis almost had a breakaway by Mike Laposha, but the Crunch netminder came way out to clear the ball and got a cleat up foot way too close to the danger zone for anyone's liking, including the refs, who promptly blue-carded Laposha, giving Cleveland a penalty shot, which Cowie somehow stopped, and a power play. I've mentioned Karich and Marinero a lot, but there's another guy I haven't brought up yet, who also played a key role in the Crunch's best seasons. It's the guy you just saw almost get an on-field circumcision, goalkeeper Otto Orff. Orff was something of a fan favorite, though he didn't have anywhere near the same pedigree as Karich and Marinero. He got his start in indoor soccer with the Buffalo Storm, agreeing to play goalie for the squad for $50 a week. He bounced around 7 teams across various leagues for about 5 years before finally finding a home with the Crunch in 1989. He made slightly more with them than he did with Buffalo.
You want me to tell you how much money I made that year? 11 grand.
He never won Goalkeeper of the Year, and his goals allowed average had gone up in 3 of the last 4 seasons. He was giving up close to double what he did in his first season with the team, though he also went 4-13 as a starter when his goals allowed average was the lowest and had a lower save percentage then, so this could just be a matter of more minutes leading to less distorted stats. He got pulled from Game 1 of this series after giving up 12 points in the first quarter, which... yeah, fair enough. But he's been on point ever since. Anyway, Cleveland was on the power play, but they weren't particularly good at them, going 3 for 11 through the postseason to this point. St. Louis, however, was really good at stopping them, killing off all 8 power plays they faced. Fortunately, Cleveland forward Andy Schmetzer didn't get that memo and took advantage of an accidental screen by the defense to sneak a 1-point power play goal past Cowie. It was a particularly nice moment for Schmetzer, as he didn't play at all in the finals last year because he was out with a knee injury. After a couple stops by Orff in the final minute, it would be 2-1 St. Louis after 1 quarter of play. Second quarter. After Orff makes a couple of stops, Andy Schmetzer draws a free kick in St. Louis's third when he gets knocked into the boards. This time, Karich takes the free kick, finds a completely unmarked Schmetzer, feeds him for a shot, and Schmetzer drills it to the opposite post just past Cowie's hand for 2 points. 3-2 Cleveland. That would be the only goal of the entire second quarter, sending the Crunch into halftime with the lead in a low-scoring affair. Aside from the players, I have to wonder whether Cleveland's coach was getting nervous. Gary Hindley had been coaching various teams since 1970, and he never won a championship. After almost 25 years and falling at the last hurdle the year before, it can be easy to have doubts creep in. That, and it's even easier to have doubts when Cleveland is involved. Those doubts grew when, not even a minute into the third quarter, Cleveland gave up a free kick in their own end. Doyle lines up over the ball and finds Kevin Hundelt at the back post for an easy 2-pointer. 4-3 St. Louis. Extra props to Hundelt for playing the whole game with that massive cast on his left hand. Less than 30 seconds later, Cleveland presses forward along the left boards. Cowie leaves the goal to try and clear it away, him and 2 other St. Louis players, but in the scramble for the ball, it pops out directly in front of Marinero, who takes the gimme 2-point shot. 5-4 Cleveland. By the way, that goal you just saw? It set a new league record for most goals scored in the playoffs. A few minutes later, the Crunch defenders get caught pressing too far forward on a free kick, and Joe Reininger takes a shot that goes right under Orff's leg and into the goal. For a moment, it looked like the ball might bounce up and hit the crossbar, but no. 6-5 St. Louis. For those keeping track, that's 3 lead changes in under 5 minutes of play. They would trade goals for the rest of the quarter, until St. Louis's David Doyle and Ted Eck put up 2 goals less than a minute apart to give St. Louis a 12-9 lead going into the fourth quarter. For the record, yes, I am skipping over a few things because the only video I could find of this game was an ESPN2 re-airing that cut parts of the game due to time constraints. Mere seconds into the fourth quarter, Cleveland's Tommy Tanner runs into Cowie while trying to go after a loose ball. In the ensuing scrum, Tanner ends up elbowing defender John Klein in the back of the head, to which Cowie responds by grabbing Tanner's jersey like he's about to stuff him in a locker if he doesn't give up his lunch money. Karich runs in and he and defender Dev Reeves get into it, which is enough for the referees to call both of them for a minor penalty and a major misconduct. so they both have to sit in the penalty box for a total of 7 minutes. If you listen carefully, you can actually hear how thrilled Karic is to be given a 7-minute break.
And let's listen in to the rest.
16 white, 17 teal.
On the ensuing penalty shot, David Doyle sneaks it past Orff. And not only does St. Louis now have a 13-9 lead, Cleveland is without the league MVP for almost half of the final quarter. The only silver lining is that Cleveland also got a penalty shot, which Marinaro scored on to pull Cleveland back within 3. Unfortunately, things get even worse. Off a few shots that go wide of the net, Mark Moser catches Cleveland's Sean Medved napping, steps into the ball, and fires it past Orff. 15-10 St. Louis, and what seems like the nail in the coffin, even given that there are still 11 minutes left. Then St. Louis commits an illegal substitution penalty, giving Cleveland a power play. On that power play, Medved finds an unmarked Tanner on the right boards, and Tanner curls one past Cowie for the goal. 15-11 St. Louis. Doug Miller would miss this shot wide right, but not long after, this tackle of Cleveland's George Fernandez costs St. Louis another penalty shot. But this time Cowie manages to stonewall Marinaro as Cleveland gets its third power play. Eck for St. Louis commits this foul on purpose so he can sub out for another defender. But during the power play, the penalties on Karic and Reeves expire. Cleveland fails to score this time, but not long after the penalty kill, Tanner gets dragged to the ground, and the ensuing free kick eventually leads to Karic nutmegging his defender to find Marinaro, who nudges it past Cowie for the 2-point goal. That led to this extremely nice moment for Marinaro, but more importantly, it meant Cleveland was only down by 2 with a few minutes to play. The Crunch play aggressive off the restart, resulting in Marinaro drawing a foul to set up this free kick. As they'd done countless times before, Karic found Marinaro, and Marinaro fired a low-line drive toward the far post. The Crunch went from heartbreak to hope in the span of 22 in-game seconds, tying the game at 15 with about 5 minutes to go and turning the 11,000 and change in attendance from sullen to psyched. I agree, guy in the stands, that does deserve a wow. Meanwhile, Andy Schmetzer is being treated by the training staff for some kind of chest injury, but there's no way he's going to miss a second of this game. Both teams had their chances, mostly the Crunch, but neither team gave up any more goals. At least until there were under 20 seconds to play. Orff lost control of a ball and was forced to play it forward himself with a St. Louis player draped all over him. Fortunately for him, he got fouled hard by another player and was able to go back to his own net. A free kick with 3 seconds left ended with a Marinaro shot getting blocked. So for the 4th time in league history, a finals game was headed to sudden death overtime. Still, in that final quarter, Marinaro took more than double the number of shots of all of St. Louis, and it helped the Crunch get a shot at a title that was, at one point, seemingly out of reach. Just as an aside, as a Joe Satriani fan, I appreciate that ESPN2 would just dub in the same 1 or 2 Satriani songs while transitioning to commercial breaks.
When we come back, who will play and who won't in Game 4? The Crunch lead the Ambush 3-2.
It's sudden death overtime, and I would like to welcome you to the Otto Orff Show. St. Louis player/coach Daryl Duran fires a shot that deflects off a defender, but Orff doesn't have the chance to catch it, and there's another St. Louis player standing a few feet to his right. He swings at the ball, and it deflects off of Orff's torso as he dives toward it, presumably saying "No" in slow motion as he does this, then scrambles forward and dives on top of the ball like a soldier on a grenade. Crisis averted. Or maybe not. A minute later, Doyle takes this shot that hits the boards, and Orff, trying to make sure he doesn't end up deflecting the ball into his own net, jumps and flails his legs out of the way like he just got hit by a Mini Cooper trying to cross the street. You can see him struggling to stand up after this, and Otto himself explained why. "I throw my legs out of the way of the rebound and tear my hamstring. Although I thought it was cramps, I found out in the following weeks that it was a torn hamstring. Worth the effort and time to recover. Smiley face. By now, team owner George Hoffman has been pacing nervously behind the net for the past hour or so, as Orf breaks up this chance for St. Louis. At this point, the refs see what's happening and check on Otto, but ultimately he stays in the game. Moments later, he gets bulldozed by a teammate and an ambush player, but hey, he still held on to the ball. Later, Karich draws a foul in St. Louis's end, while Orf tries to shake off what he thinks is a cramp. Nothing comes of that, and Orf almost gets caught too far out of his net again, but the Crunch defense helps defuse that situation. St. Louis gets a free kick of their own, but the Cleveland wall stands tall. More close calls ensue for the Crunch, which include this hurdle by Mark Thomas. Not bad for a guy with a bad knee. Before St. Louis catches Orf way out of his net again, resulting in Otto leaping as high as his injured leg can take him to knock this shot away from the net, then immediately having to stop another shot coming directly at his head. After another few chances, Cowie makes this save on a shot by Tim Tima to keep St. Louis in the game. The game is such a defensive stalemate that the clock hits 0, and this becomes the first time in NPSL history that a finals game goes to double overtime. Orf is still in the game with maybe 50% of his left leg working and everybody else running on fumes. It's apparent that the refs absolutely do not want to call anything that would result in penalty box time or a deep free kick. Orf dives headfirst at a ball to break up a St. Louis attack, and it leads to this.
Midfield to give him time to get back. Here comes George Fernandez. The Crunch has numbers. Spencer on the board. There it is! Scores! The Crunch has won it!
Let's take another look at what happens on this play. Fernandez sees Schmetzer is open on the left boards and passes it to him. Schmetzer sees the defender charging in and volleys a pass off the boards at a steep enough angle that it bounces out in front of the net away from Cowie, who's crowded against the post trying to make sure nothing sneaks by him. The defender that charged Schmetzer was originally matched up with Marinero, who is temporarily unmarked and moves to the middle of the penalty area. The pass gets to him before another defender can switch onto him, and he delivers the game and championship-winning goal. Marinero sprints all over the field like a fox being chased by a pack of hounds. Orf lets both his good and bad leg give out for a bit, and the 30-year championship drought for Cleveland ends. My favorite part of the whole celebration was George Hoffman, who clearly planned to say something if this moment came, but was completely unable to say anything because the fans were cheering so much and "We Are the Champions" was drowning him out.
Cleveland Crunch fans, 1 second. Cleveland, 1 second.
Eventually, he just gave up and paraded around the field with the team and the trophy. Coach Gary Hindley asks for a photo with the trophy because, in his own words,
I might never get it again!
and you know what? He was right. I know what some of you are thinking. It's an indoor soccer team. How much did Cleveland really care about the Crunch winning a championship? Here's what the local news looked like.
And the Crunch goes into double overtime before bringing Cleveland its first championship in 30 years.
Hector Marinero, there he goes, scored the winning two-pointer in the second OT, and all Cleveland sports fans can be proud. He's worked so hard for this. The whole team really has.
Nice. So nice. Way to go, Crunch.
This is what happens when you wait 30 years to win a championship. People are beating their hands. The traffic's going crazy. They're celebrating here tonight.
The champagne flowed on Prospect last night at the Convocation Center. Was the site of our city's first title in 30 seasons. Hector Marinero scored 2 fourth-quarter goals to send it into overtime, and after battling through 1 scoreless overtime, Hector lit the lamp and the fuse that sent 11,000 into a frenzy.
Congratulations to the Cleveland Crunch. They did it in double overtime. A true marathon thriller. The Crunch claims Cleveland's first professional championships since 1964 as they win the NPSL title.
The Cleveland Crunch would go on to win 2 more NPSL titles, one in the 95-96 season and another in the 98-99 season. When the NPSL folded, they joined the second incarnation of the MISL and rebranded back to the Force in 2002. As is apparently tradition for teams called the Cleveland Force, they would make it to the finals in 2005, lose, and immediately shut down. Even after not existing for over a decade, the Cleveland Crunch still holds a special place in Cleveland sports mythos, and in my case, a place in my closet and on my hat rack. I'm not alone in that, as a couple local figures decided to revive the Cleveland Crunch for 2021 and join the Major Arena Soccer League. As of my writing this, they've already assembled most of their staff, held tryouts, and signed a bunch of players. As for the key players from the Crunch, Hector Marinero stayed in the Northeast Ohio area, playing for Cleveland even after they rebranded to the Force again before retiring in 2004. Less than a year later, the MISL renamed their MVP award to the Hector Marinero Trophy. While he retired as a player, he didn't completely leave the sport. In 2006, Marinero became the head coach for the Division III soccer team at John Carroll University just outside Cleveland, where he still coaches to this day, and even got the chance to coach his son Jesse. Zoran Karic stayed with the Crunch until 2000, when they didn't re-sign him. He bounced around a few other teams, including the Crunch again, who at the time were coached by his former teammate Andy Schmetzer, before finally retiring in 2011. He's also done a lot of work with youth soccer in the Northeast Ohio area. Otto Orff finished his career with the Force in 2004. He founded some soccer camps and academies, and also co-founded the Great Lakes Futsal League. Futsal being a variant of soccer played indoors on a hard court. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of the original Cleveland Cursebreakers. You know, before everyone decided to move the goalposts back by specifying that only NFL, NBA, MLB, and NHL teams counted.
So, Hector Marinero, you just scored the game-winning goal in overtime. What are you doing today?
Well, I'm just going to go out here and have some fun because, you know, it's really nice to go out and play now that, you know, you've realized you've achieved all the goals that you really wanted, you know. And to bring this city a championship is the only goal we had this year. And we're just so happy for everybody. You know, the organization's been great to us, and this city deserves a winner, and we're just glad we could do it for them.